Oh, my pretties. Hello, everybody. Adam Savage, and I am in Los Angeles right now at Prop Store's warehouse for some extra goodness. Fans of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, specifically Better Call Saul, are in for a super treat right now because the show just ended, as you might or might not know, and Prop Store has a whole bunch of amazing artifacts from the run of Better Call Saul, and we are going to spend a few videos going over them. Chuck Costas,
hey,
good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Glad you could be here, and it was a great show. I'm glad we could celebrate this.
I am so excited because there's a way in which Better Call Saul felt so much more so part of the world. Like, so much of Better Call Saul was like we've been talking about off camera, like found objects.
Yeah.
You know, stuff that wasn't made necessarily specifically for the show, but became iconic through its inclusion of the show.
Right. The writing was so good that it really just elevated these everyday objects so that you actually want them because you remember how great that storyline was. And I guess we can talk about some of these things.
That's exactly what I want to do. I want to start, I know I want to finish with this one. So let's start with over here. Tell me what's going on with these two pieces.
Yeah. So starting over here, everybody remembers what I thought was very unique for this show was at the beginning of the show, they actually had 13 different sequences that they rotated through each season.
Yeah.
And in season 6, they did something a little bit different. We won't get into that. But you see each of these different items. So this was the Swing Master. Again, a found item. It actually rotates and you can put your feet on it. It relaxes you. I think that was part of it. But I always wondered when I saw this thing, I was like, what is a Swing Master?
Yeah,
Why is
exactly.
it rotating back and forth? Like, what does it do? And then actually in season 6, you actually see it incorporated into one of the episodes as well, which I thought was also a bit of genius.
We hadn't seen that before.
You hadn't seen that before. So they actually they've been building to it for 6 seasons, and then at the end you actually see this object as well as the scales of justice that are incorporated into the real world.
Okay, so I want to tell you we aren't going to be doing any spoilers here for season 6. We are going to be steering clear of them. So we're going to be talking about these objects without talking about how they figure into the plot. I see we've got, is this one of Chuck's space blankets?
That is a space blanket. So he suffered from electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And I think this was the thing that he actually used to protect himself from electronic devices or electromagnetic waves that were in his way, whether it be cell phones or other things that might be in his office, you know, or maybe a toaster or something like that.
I had a really difficult time with Chuck as a character.
Really?
He enraged me. I felt like he never treated Jimmy right, and just looking at this blanket makes me freshly mad at Michael McKean.
Well, and I think you also remember that these space blankets were used by Jimmy. He goes out into the desert and also he has one of the space blankets that also saves him too. So it had multiple different sort of purposes throughout the show. They seem to love these space blankets, but I think Chuck is the one that we probably associate it with most.
Yeah, indeed. All right, tell me about this notebook here.
This ties here, and this is actually, you know, again, going to his hypersensitivity around electromagnetic. Chuck kept a journal that actually talked about his, things that were happening with him physically and how it affected him. And this is actually sort of the journal that goes along with the space blanket. So you get the whole history of sort of his medical, incidents here, which is also very cool.
Dude, I did not realize. I'm particularly fond of Peppernalia, of paper props, simply because it usually means someone spent a ton of time working on something that you never get to really see on screen.
And you get all the detail. The story, when you actually get these, you actually get an enhanced storyline to what was going on in the main storyline. So that's a great example there of going deeper into the story.
That seems, and like I said, there'll be several videos covering props from the show, but it seems, as we've been talking off camera, that is a consistency that the layered storytelling into each piece.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. When we saw all this stuff together, we actually learned so much more about the show by actually looking at the props and as well as the costumes as well. So.
The shoes. These are a season 3 plot point, right?
These, I think so. This is the Sandpiper, and so this is one of Jimmy's scams, and I think that's another thing that's a common thread through all the different seasons. Is Jimmy's a scammer? You're going to get to see a whole bunch of different things,
and he gets tempted. I mean, it's always about Jimmy being tempted,
it's like,
right?
Where there's an opportunity, he's going to take it. And here for Sandpiper, there was one woman that was in charge of making all the decisions, and he decides to pit everybody against her. And the way he was going to do it was by modeling these fancy new shoes. And so he actually puts these on. These are the ones that are scuffed, so you can see that he actually wore these. But then he offers her a pair of shoes, and then she wears them around proudly, while all the other women say, "Well, isn't she really rich?" And so they actually turn her against her, so that she becomes Jimmy's ally as far as making decisions around Sandpiper, which is just ingenious. But a simple pair of shoes can do that.
It is also the kind of that sort of sophisticated social engineering that Jimmy frequently does in the show is the kind of thing that is really hard to do in a 2 hours of a normal feature film, right? That is the kind of extensive plot layout that you could only do in a serial television.
Yeah,
show.
long form television is great for that, and it's been great to see that with a whole bunch of different shows, but with this one.
I've been saving a couple of my favorites for last. Is this one of the Hummels?
This is one of the Hummels. This is the Merry Wanderer. And for those that remember, again, the scam that was associated with this is that he sees another old lady, which he takes advantage of, that has Bavarian Boy, which is the super collectible one. So any collector out there would really want Bavarian Boy. And he scams to actually replace it on her shelf without her even noticing, so that he can go ahead and sell Bavarian Boy to the collector's market.
What I loved about that temptation of Jimmy in this plot line was specifically how easy the scam was. It was practically victimless in his mind and effortless as well. And I can't look at those things without feeling a little bit of tension.
Yes, it was a dastardly thing. Maybe not the worst thing he did, but for collectors that are out there like myself, that really hit home. You know?
Wow. So do you know how many of these they used in the show?
We actually have a few of these. Okay. I think there's like 3 or 4 that we're actually offering in the auction of the Merry Wanderer. I think we only saw like one or two of the Bavarian Boys in there. So still pretty scarce. But again, I'm sure a found object if you actually go out and buy Hummels. If you're a Hummel collector, you may already be familiar with it.
Yeah.
I know my grandma gave me a Hummel when I was a kid, but not this one.
Now this auction benefits charity. Am I right?
It is. There's two local Albuquerque charities where Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad were both filmed, and I think the actors and everybody felt such a strong connection with Albuquerque as well as Sony that they wanted to give back, and the auction is a way of giving back to the community.
Yeah, well, they've been practically living in Albuquerque for the better part of 12 or 13 years.
I believe Bob had a house there, and some of the other actors actually stayed with him there too. But yeah, it was a great hometown to them, and I love to see Albuquerque emerging as one of the sort of television capitals of the world now.
Me too. I love that city.
Yeah.
I saved my favorite for last in this video, which is, am I right? Are these the scales of justice from the opening sequence?
These are the scales of justice. Yeah, they are. They seem out of balance at this point in time, but yes, those are one of the scales of justice that they had, and I think they actually had to put a little bit of tape or something in there to actually keep it in place so that it did stay.
So it's hard to balance the scales of justice.
It is.
Metaphor.
I guess it got really out of balance with Saul Goodman.
How many of these were there?
2.
Just 2?
Just 2.
And you have one for auction. I'm kind of obsessed with this. I almost want to just try and make one. This is there is something so, I wouldn't look twice at this in a thrift store, right? It's just a brass tchotchke, but they've loaded it with so much power by showing it to me at the beginning of so many episodes.
Yeah, and you could, I guess you could put something in there and actually shift the scales of justice if you wanted to.
Dude. And this is in the auction.
This is in the auction. Yep. Wow. This is one of the highlight auction items that we will have.
So when Better Call Saul wrapped and Sony calls you guys, you went down to the set. How does that process work?
How did that work? Yeah. So we actually worked with the assistant prop master. We actually went before season 6 started, which was crazy in that in some cases, obviously we'd seen the scales of justice before, but there were other items that we had no idea what they were.
Because you hadn't seen season 6.
Because we hadn't seen season 6, and there was a lot of secrecy. We actually had to sign NDAs around it, as well as, from what I understand, they actually wouldn't even give the archives a copy of the episode until the day it had actually aired.
Right.
And so we were working hand in hand with the archives, where there were 2, they would get one, we would get one for the auction, and we worked with them to make sure that the future of this is protected and they have what they need for it. But we selected items that we knew from seasons 1 through 5 that were very important. We had our list. We worked with them hand in hand. But season 6 was crazy because we were just like, well, we can guess what happens, and we had to do our best guess, and some of them were right and some of them may not have been.
That sounds stressful.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun.
I'll bet.
Because we got to make up in our minds, like, how do we think this ends? What do we, where do we think this is going, and what do we think is going to be important? So for me, it was a lot of fun. I almost felt like I was one of the creators alongside Vince and Peter. Well,
and there's a word you just used where you said the archivist. Like, this is a show that takes itself correctly seriously enough to have an archivist. Is that right?
It is. And if you think about it, they actually had, we'll talk about some of the other items later, but they actually had to bring back stuff stuff from Breaking Bad to reuse it on Better Call Saul in some cases.
Wow.
And that's where the archives was very helpful to actually have what they wanted from Breaking Bad so that they could actually use it in Better Call Saul, or at least model it after that. So.
I love hearing that. I mean, because there's so many times, you know, the initial hero prop from movie number 1 disappears into the ether. No one can find it.
Yeah.
And the replica of it in the second film doesn't even come close. So I love that they took themselves seriously enough to hold on to these pieces.
Yep. So, you know, we've got one, and hopefully a collector out there will be able to save this for the future as well. And then archives kept what they felt was important, and hopefully we'll see those in future shows, or at least maybe in future museum exhibits as well.
Right. I mean, he's got to be pitching another spinoff, right? I'm hoping.
I can't comment.
Okay.
I don't know, and I don't know anything about season 6.
Yeah. Again, proceeds from this auction benefit charities. Information is in the description below. Chuck, thank you so much for this tour. There will be more. I know you can see other things in the frame. We'll be covering a bunch of those in subsequent videos. Again, links are in the description below. Thanks you guys for watching. Chuck, thank you, man.
Hey, my pleasure.